Did you ever notice how differently you remember the past compared to how you experienced it? Think about that. There were probably years of your life that felt terrible while you were living them, years where you felt lost, confused, maybe even hopeless, and yet, when you look back at them now, they don't seem nearly as bad as they felt at the time. In fact, some of those memories might even make you smile now. And I've always found that strange because when you're in the middle of a difficult chapter of your life, it feels permanent, like this is just who you are now. But that's almost never true. And I think one of the biggest tricks our minds play on us is convincing us that the present moment is forever. If you're happy now, it feels like this is gonna last forever. If you're suffering now, it feels like suffering will last forever as well. But if you lived long enough, you start noticing a pattern. Nothing stays, not the good or bad or the people, not even the version of yourself you think you will always be. Because everything is changing and it's always gonna keep changing, whether you want it to or not. And I know some of you listening to this are probably going through something right now, otherwise, you wouldn't be here. Maybe you're lonely, or you feel stuck, or working a job you hate like me. But trust me, I understand that feeling. Something changes as you get older, at least it did for me at 28 years old now. And one thing I noticed is that life slowly teaches you a lesson, whether you want to learn it or not. Most of the things you were terrified of never happen, and most of the things that do happen aren't nearly as devastating as you imagined. Think about the things that once felt world-ending, a breakup, a failed exam, moving away, losing a friend. At the time, they felt enormous, like your entire life had been split in two, but here you are still breathing and moving. That's not because those experiences didn't hurt, they did. It's because human beings are far more adaptable than they realize. We survive things we were convinced that would destroy us, and then one day we tell stories about them. I think that's one of the strangest parts of life. I think that's one of the strangest parts of life. The chapters we desperately wanted to escape often become the stories we cherish later. Not because they were enjoyable, but because they shaped us. They meant something, they proved we could survive them. And if you ever talk to somebody older than you, maybe like your parents, grandparents, older friend, and noticed how they talk about difficult periods of their life, they'll tell you stories about being broke, lost, confused, not knowing what they were doing, and somehow they laugh while telling those stories. And you ask why? Because they're no longer trapped inside the experience. They can see the whole picture now. They know how the story continued. You don't. At least not yet. That's one of the hardest parts about being alive. You only ever experience life from the middle of the story, never from the end. You don't know which struggle will matter or which disappointment will redirect you. And because you don't know, your brain fills the gaps with fear. It assumes the worst. It prepares for disaster because that's what brains do. They try to protect us. Unfortunately, they are often terrible fortune tellers. And I sometimes think about how many people gave up right before things started changing. Not because they were weak or lacked talent, but because they were convinced the current moment represented the rest of their life. Imagine quitting a movie halfway through or reading half a book and deciding you already know how it ends. We take a temporary feeling and turn it into a permanent prediction. The truth is much simpler though. You don't know what's coming, and that's scary, sure, but it's also incredibly hopeful. Because if you don't know what's coming, then you also don't know what good things are waiting for you. You don't know which friendship you will make, which opportunity you will discover, which goal you will achieve. And maybe that's why I want to make this video, not to tell you that life is easy, because it's not, let's be real. Not to tell you happiness is permanent and nothing is magically gonna work out. I just want to remind you of something. The person you will be in 5 years from now might look back at this exact period of your life completely differently than you do today. They might look back and think, wow, I thought I wasn't going to make it. I thought things will never change. And not because the struggle wasn't real, but because the story didn't end where you thought it would. And if you're going through a difficult period right now, I hope you give yourself the chance to see what happens next. Because life has a funny habit of changing when you've almost convinced yourself it never will. And years from now, you might find yourself telling someone else the exact same thing. The happiness didn't arrive all at once, that life didn't suddenly become perfect. But somehow, despite everything, it became worth living.